Get the clip ready if you would, sir, so we can discuss what I teased a moment ago, because I do think this was something that you could latch on to and discern some meaning behind beyond the pitches and the information. This was something that I thought, okay, I I see what he means and I know why.
Listen early for the cue.
Okay, here we go.
Really, everybody defensively, I wanted to see elite level effort, a relentless pursuit of the ball, and just an knack to be able to go make plays. And I think when you look at that defensive front, they all have great size, ability. They've been able to impact the quarterback. You really get a sense that every guy that we brought in on that defensive front, their best football is in front of them.
Between the there was a man stating that he is going to demand and was desperately searching for effort, which tells you all you need to know about what was lacking, in addition to many other things, but what in particular was most unforgivable about last year's team.
I can hit that again and cut it off early if you'd like.
Well, you're going to have to.
Really, everybody defensively, I wanted to see elite level effort.
Stop. That's all you needed to do. When you hear the head coach talking about one of the facets of play that he's looking for in guys that he's watching on film or guys that they recruited in the portal is effort, it's disappointing. It's somewhat depressing to think about what that means in regards to what they did or did not have here a year ago. But I also think it leads to something that we can be certain of as we get set to embark on this offseason and on into the spring football camp, which will get us all juiced and jazzed and ready to go for fall camp, because we'll get a glimpse of the new coaches and we'll see the new players. And you're really ready to flush last year, so you're already eagerly anticipating and awaiting these benchmarks of the offseason. I think, bare minimum, it is safe to say that Florida State will, on the surface, appear, and I think in the record book, be a much better football team than they were a year ago. Now, the knee-jerk response to that would be they couldn't be much worse. It would almost be impossible at Florida State to be much worse. And I would agree with that, but for the reasons that I'm stating is that they will be buttoned up. They will be on defense very well coached. Not to say they won't be on offense. I'm just pointing out that there were real communication issues and a lack of coordination at times defensively off and on during Fuller's tenure here. It wasn't just last year. And I think that will change. I think that will certainly change. But what will seem like a massive leap forward will be born out of effort alone. When you get used to watching pedestrian play, miscommunication, poor effort game to game, quarter to quarter, when you see a semblance of a well-organized defense replete with guys that give everything they have play to play, game to game, you're going to think that they are vastly improved. And I think, honestly, as rudimentary as that sounds, that's going to be true. Just playing really hard consistently and knowing where to be and communicating well, pretty low bar. That alone will guarantee you that Florida State is infinitely better than they were a year ago. Communicating well, knowing what you're doing, and playing hard will put Florida State at a place where, bare minimum, they're a 500 football team. It's because you have the players to ensure, and you play in a conference that ensures you're going to win 6-7 games just doing that.
Yeah, that's a different way of saying it's very hard to go 2-10 with that roster. You're saying it the opposite way, from the improvement side of the equation, rather than the negative way, which we've lived for a while, which is, hey man, that roster might not have been 10-2 good, Could have been dead wrong about that. Probably was. It wasn't 2-10 good or 2-10 bad. You have to try to land at 2-10 with last year's schedule. There a lot of things have to go wrong. And
Well,
it's a different way of approaching the same thing you're saying.
yeah, buddy, what has to go wrong is not only do you play poorly in the games, but there are mitigating factors. There are guys that lack leadership. There are games in which effort's in question. There's certainly an element of players tuning out coaches. I mean, he just made a bunch of changes, as he noted, leadership changes. That's a nice way of saying I fired a bunch of guys and hired some new ones. We have leadership changes. Yeah, leadership changes abound. Why? Well, we know why. But it's not a singular thing that happened that led to that. It's now that singular thing, you could say it boils down to wins and losses. But how you arrive at 10 losses at a place like Florida State, it's not one thing. And because it's not, it requires you to make leadership changes. Lots of them. I'm going to be very curious to see how that manifests. What do we lay eyes on in the spring? They're starting the tour of duty. They're getting ready to get after it. I don't know what we'll glean from that. Every program in America has some sort of labeled, whatever it is, militaristic sounding thing in the offseason that they do to get better, to get stronger, to be in great shape, to train and reshape their bodies. But yeah, it is a foundation. It's a very important foundation. It is a time in which you can come together and agree upon the level of effort and sacrifice you're willing to make for one another. It matters. But at the same time, after a 2-10 season, it's not something that matters that a fan base wants to hear about per se. They understand it's happening, and they understand the necessity of it, and they understand it's the bedrock of success moving forward to some degree. But yeah, they heard all of that last tour of duty, and we went 2-10.
Yeah, basically what we don't need to hear is, or the fan base doesn't need to hear, is this is the fastest, most explosive tour of duty that we've had so far in my time at Florida State.
Well, I don't think he'll ever say it again, even if it were true.
Probably not. Now, what was interesting last night is he was talking about new systems that they have to integrate as he was describing the winter and spring schedule. Reflecting on it and looking back at it this morning and rewatching it, I don't know if that was in reference to spring camp itself or the tour of duty, but if we do get a look at the tour of duty,
if there's something different, we'll have to report it, document it, and talk about it.
It'll be interesting to see if they change it on that level. We know that changes are coming to practice. There have to be, because it was 2-10 and you got 2 new coordinators. They're going to want to run practice differently, and they have the autonomy to do so. But I wonder if changes make their way all the way down to Coach Storms and how the tour of duty is laid out. It's not that they do the same workout schedule every day. When we've gone over different years, you've seen different drills. I'm not saying it's always been cookie cutter, one way, always. But if there's any type of different pace to it, anything that's drastically different, it will be interesting to see if it made it to the strength level. Because if it did, that tells you that they're looking at all aspects of the foundation. There's a corporate term that Mike Norvell probably would say. All aspects in the foundation of what we do. I wonder if it trickles down to that level of how they do their off-season training.
Yeah, I don't think Florida State's problems were rooted in the strength and conditioning and nutritional programs, but I understand your point, and it's certainly a valid one. I wonder how many people are going to want to hear about it, but yeah, certainly if the things have changed, that's worth noting.
Well, is there a different way to test the mettle of your guys to detect if they're really engaged or not? Maybe there's a way to do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's for a strength coach who's paid over $1 million a year to figure out. But I think that's part of this off-season's task versus last year's, is to be able to detect an issue before the issue becomes a Dublin performance and a Monday night performance in your home stadium.